Late one night, the quiet streets of a small town suddenly filled with the flashing lights of an ambulance parked outside a convenience store. It wasn't just any night shift for Malik, a young paramedic on the team. He and his partner had rushed to this spot after a distress call came in. A man was having a medical emergency just a few blocks away. They were in a race against time to save their patient. Malik's partner quickly dashed inside the convenience store to grab some emergency supplies they'd run out of, leaving Malik outside, keeping an eye on their patient, Officer Lawson, who lay inside the ambulance in critical condition. Officer Lawson was a respected figure in the police department, known for his fairness and dedication. But on this night, as fate would have it, another police officer was about to come onto the scene who had a very different reputation. Officer Thompson pulled up next to the ambulance, already irritated by the flashing lights and what he considered a disruption to his patrol route. Known around town for being a bit rough around the edges, Thompson wasn't the type to show much patience or understanding, especially when it came to rules. He frowned at the ambulance parked in a no-standing zone and marched over, demanding to know why they were stopped there. Malik, feeling the urgency of his patient's condition and knowing his partner would return any second, politely explained the situation to Officer Thompson, saying they were just grabbing some essential medical supplies and would be gone soon. But the explanation didn't sit well with Thompson. To him, rules were rules, and there was no room for exceptions, not even in an emergency. Without giving Malik a chance to further explain, Officer Thompson began shouting, asking why they hadn't parked somewhere else. Malik, sensing that the situation was quickly escalating, tried to stay calm, explaining again that their patient inside was in serious condition and they couldn't afford to waste any time. But this only made Thompson angrier. In his eyes, Malik's calmness looked like defiance, and he was not in the mood for any resistance. Then, in a shocking move, Thompson's patience snapped. Instead of handling the situation professionally, he lashed out, striking Malik without any warning. The force of the punch sent Malik staggering back. For a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. Malik could barely process what had just happened. Passers-by stopped in their tracks, horrified by what they were witnessing. Some reached for their phones, recording the scene, while others tried to make sense of why an officer would attack a paramedic trying to do his job. Through the blur of the moment, Malik's mind was still on his patient, Officer Lawson, lying vulnerable in the ambulance. Malik knew that Lawson needed him more than ever. But here he was, facing unexpected hostility from someone supposed to protect and support emergency workers. Malik stood there, reeling from the blow. He felt a sharp sting in his cheek, and confusion flooded his mind. All he had done was try to explain their situation, but Officer Thompson had reacted with sudden aggression. Malik knew he had to stay focused, though. There was a life hanging in the balance. Shaking off the shock, he took a deep breath and steadied himself, determined not to let his emotions take control. His first thought was his duty, to return to his patient and ensure his safety. Meanwhile, Thompson kept yelling, his anger seeming to grow even though Malik hadn't retaliated. It was clear that Thompson was used to people obeying without question, and seeing Malik stand his ground, though respectfully, seemed to fuel his temper further. Malik tried once more to explain the urgency of their stop, but Thompson didn't seem interested in listening. He was too busy asserting his authority, maybe even trying to make a scene. This was becoming more than just a misunderstanding over parking. It was turning into a public spectacle. A small crowd started to gather nearby, some people looking worried, others taking out their phones to record. A few even shouted words of support toward Malik, telling Thompson to back off. But Thompson seemed more annoyed by the crowd's reactions, almost as if it embarrassed him. Malik, on the other hand, wished the situation hadn't drawn so much attention. All he wanted was to get back to the ambulance and do his job. Inside the ambulance, Officer Lawson was lying on a stretcher, barely conscious. He was a respected figure in town, known for his honesty and sense of justice. If he had been able to see what was happening, he would have likely been the first to step in and put an end to the hostility. But for now, he was unaware of the chaos unfolding just outside. Malik's partner finally returned, noticing the tense atmosphere. Confused and concerned, he tried to step in, explaining to Thompson that they were on a critical call. But Thompson was too far into his tirade to back down. He continued to argue, ignoring the pleas of the paramedics and the crowd around them. Malik's partner, understanding the severity of their patient's condition, gestured to Malik to return to the ambulance. Ignoring Thompson, they both made their way to Lawson, their focus shifting back to saving his life. Inside, Malik resumed his work, stabilizing Officer Lawson's condition as best as he could with the supplies they had. His partner kept an eye on the door, ready to confront Thompson if he tried to interrupt again. For now, Malik's hands were steady, his focus sharp. His patient needed him, and nothing would distract him from doing what he was trained to do. Outside, Thompson was beginning to sense the weight of the onlookers' disapproval. People were whispering, recording, and some were even calling out to him, demanding answers. He had come over with a quick temper and an assumption, but now he was beginning to feel the pressure of being watched. As Malik worked inside the ambulance, the seriousness of Officer Lawson's condition became clear. Officer Lawson's breathing was weak, and he looked barely conscious. Malik and his partner exchanged quick glances, each of them knowing just how critical the next few moments were. Every second counted, and they couldn't afford any more distractions or delays. Lawson wasn't just any patient. He was a respected officer who had given his life to protecting this town. Malik's mind raced, not with anger over what just happened outside, but with worry for the man lying helpless on the stretcher in front of him. Outside the ambulance, Officer Thompson began to notice the intensity in the crowd's gaze. People whispered among themselves, phones still recording, capturing every moment. He felt the pressure, but tried to stand firm, unwilling to admit that maybe he'd gone too far. In his eyes, he had only been doing his job, making sure everyone followed the rules. But as he glanced at the people around him, their expressions told a different story. They weren't seeing a cop maintaining order. They were seeing an officer pushing his power too far. Thompson shifted uneasily. For a brief moment, doubt crossed his mind. Had he really made the right choice by confronting the paramedics? But his pride held him back from apologizing or stepping aside. He remained near the ambulance, though his tough stance had softened. He even tried to justify his actions, muttering about rules needing to be followed, to anyone close enough to hear. However, it was clear to the crowd that his words didn't match the seriousness of the situation unfolding inside the ambulance. Meanwhile, inside, Malik felt a sense of urgency like never before. Officer Lawson's condition was worsening, and they needed to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. His partner checked the equipment and gave Malik a quick nod, signaling that they were ready to move. But with Thompson still outside, blocking their path, they didn't know how to proceed without sparking another confrontation. Then Malik made a bold decision. Ignoring any thoughts of the conflict outside, he focused on his patient, speaking words of encouragement to Officer Lawson in a calm, steady voice. "You're going to be okay," Malik said softly, hoping that even in his weakened state, Lawson could hear him. The tension outside faded in Malik's mind as he concentrated on his duty, the one thing he had control over. Back outside, a bystander finally stepped forward, politely asking Thompson to move aside and let the paramedics do their job. "They're trying to save a life," she said, her voice firm but respectful. Thompson glanced at her, and for the first time, he seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. The weight of the crowd's eyes on him grew heavier, and he began to feel out of place, standing between the ambulance and the road to the hospital. Seeing the shift, Malik's partner seized the moment and asked Thompson to let them pass. "We have a man in critical condition," he explained, keeping his tone respectful. Thompson hesitated, but finally he stepped aside, his eyes lingering on the scene as the ambulance doors closed. Malik breathed a sigh of relief as he felt the vehicle pull away, his focus entirely on Officer Lawson as they raced toward the hospital. With every bump and turn, Malik's determination grew. The people watching, the phones recording Thompson's aggressive stance. All of it faded as they sped toward the hospital. Malik knew that, in the end, his job was to protect and save lives, no matter what obstacles stood in the way. And in that moment, nothing else mattered but getting Officer Lawson to safety. Inside the ambulance, Malik stayed focused on Officer Lawson, carefully monitoring his vitals as the vehicle sped toward the hospital. The sirens wailed, echoing through the silent streets, and Malik felt the weight of responsibility with each passing second. The patient's face was pale, his breathing shallow, and Malik knew they were in a race against time. With steady hands, he continued to check Lawson's blood pressure and oxygen levels. Mentally running through every step, he'd been trained for in critical situations like this. Malik's partner, sitting across from him, gave a nod of reassurance, trying to stay calm as he adjusted the oxygen mask on Officer Lawson's face. They had worked together for a few years, but moments like this never got easier. Every patient was different, every life equally precious, and there was no way of knowing how each emergency would turn out. But tonight felt especially intense. They both knew that they weren't just helping a patient. They were trying to save a man deeply respected by the community. As the ambulance raced along the dark roads, Malik thought back to his encounter with Officer Thompson just minutes ago. For a moment, he felt a flash of frustration. Thompson had wasted precious time, causing a delay that could have cost Lawson his life. But Malik quickly pushed the thought aside. Right now, he needed a clear mind, one that was fully focused on his job. His dedication to saving lives was what brought him into this profession, and he wasn't about to let anything distract him from that purpose. Lawson stirred slightly, his eyes barely opening, and Malik leaned closer, speaking softly. "Hang in there, Officer Lawson." "We're almost there," he said, hoping his words might offer some comfort, even if Lawson could barely hear them. He watched as Lawson's eyes fluttered, a small sign of life, which gave Malik a spark of hope. It was the little moments like these that kept him going, knowing that his presence and words, even in small ways, could make a difference. The hospital finally came into view, its bright lights cutting through the darkness. Malik's partner radioed in their arrival, letting the emergency team know they'd be there in a few seconds. The urgency in his partner's voice matched the speed at which Malik's heart was racing. They were close, but it was still a race against time. Malik kept his attention on Lawson, preparing him for the next step as the ambulance began to slow down. As the vehicle came to a stop, the back doors flung open, and a team of nurses and doctors was already waiting. Malik and his partner swiftly began to transfer Officer Lawson onto a stretcher, working in sync with the hospital team to ensure everything went smoothly. The hospital staff could sense the urgency, too, as they wheeled Lawson through the hallways, heading toward the emergency room. Once Lawson was in the care of the hospital team, Malik and his partner stood back, catching their breath. They exchanged a look, both of them feeling the intense relief mixed with exhaustion. The sound of medical monitors and rushing footsteps filled the hallway as the doctors took over, and Malik knew that Lawson was in good hands. He felt a wave of calm wash over him, knowing they had done everything they could. In that moment, Malik realized just how dedicated he was to this job. No matter the challenges or the obstacles, like the conflict with Officer Thompson, he was committed to serving his community, saving lives, and making a difference. After Malik and his partner handed Officer Lawson over to the hospital staff, they finally took a moment to breathe. The adrenaline was still pumping, but there was a sense of relief knowing that Lawson was in the best possible care now. Malik leaned against the wall outside the emergency room, closing his eyes for a second to let the tension melt away. His partner patted him on the shoulder, giving a silent nod that said, "Good job." They both knew that what they had done tonight might have been the difference between life and death. As they waited, Malik couldn't help but think back to the chaotic scene with Officer Thompson. The anger he'd felt began to resurface. Thompson's actions hadn't just delayed them. They had put Lawson's life at risk. But Malik was also aware that he had to let it go, at least for now. He knew that focusing on the negative wouldn't change what happened. His mind was tired, but he felt a responsibility to his patient and to his profession to remain calm and professional. A nurse approached them, letting them know that Lawson was stable, but it would take time to see if he would make a full recovery. Malik felt a wave of relief wash over him, and his partner let out a quiet sigh. Knowing that Lawson was stable brought a sense of closure to the intense events of the night, but it also opened up a new layer of feelings for Malik. They made their way out of the hospital, still processing everything. As they stepped into the quiet night air, Malik noticed a few messages on his phone. Word had spread about what had happened outside the convenience store. Some of his friends and family had seen the video circulating online. Messages of support poured in, people telling Malik they were proud of him for staying calm, for putting his duty first despite the challenges. It warmed his heart to see so many people reaching out, but it also reminded him of the larger issues at hand. Officer Thompson's behavior hadn't gone unnoticed, and Malik knew this would probably spark a conversation in the town. People were already sharing their thoughts, expressing anger over the way Thompson had handled the situation. Malik didn't want to dwell on the negativity, but he felt grateful that people were speaking up about something that needed to be addressed. His job was challenging enough without having to face hostility from those who were supposed to work alongside him. As he and his partner climbed into the ambulance to head back to the station, Malik felt a mixture of emotions. He was proud of how they had handled the night, but a lingering frustration remained. He knew that Thompson's actions were just a part of a bigger problem, one that many people in his line of work had encountered. Malik didn't know what would come of this incident, but he hoped it might lead to some positive changes. On the drive back, his partner brought up the possibility of filing a formal complaint against Thompson. They both agreed that what had happened wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. Malik nodded slowly, knowing he had a decision to make. Part of him felt hesitant, not wanting to make waves. But another part of him felt that standing up against unfair treatment was the right thing to do, not just for himself, but for every other paramedic, nurse, or doctor who had faced unnecessary obstacles. By the time they pulled into the station, Malik had made up his mind. He knew that what happened couldn't be ignored. This wasn't just about one night or one officer. It was about respect and safety for everyone. As they parked the ambulance and gathered their things, Malik felt a quiet determination. He had a job to do, both on the streets and off, to make sure people like Thompson were held accountable, so that incidents like this one could be prevented in the future. The next morning, Malik woke up feeling the weight of everything that had happened the night before. The messages of support from friends and family kept coming, and even a few people he didn't know had reached out to express their gratitude and respect. People were starting to talk about what happened, and the video from that night had spread around the community. Malik was surprised by the outpouring of support, but he also felt nervous. He hadn't sought this kind of attention. He was just trying to do his job and help his patient. But it was clear that the town had taken notice, and something bigger was starting to unfold. As he prepared for his shift, Malik knew that today wouldn't be a typical day. When he arrived at the station, he was greeted by a few of his colleagues who had heard about the incident. Some of them gave him encouraging pats on the back, while others simply nodded, as if they understood the frustration he felt. His supervisor approached him, asking to speak privately. Malik felt his pulse quicken. He wondered if there would be any fallout from speaking up about Officer Thompson's behavior, but his supervisor's expression was calm, almost supportive. In the small office, his supervisor looked at him thoughtfully and began, "Malik, I've heard a lot about what happened last night. I want you to know that we're here for you." Malik felt a rush of relief as his supervisor continued, "What you did, staying calm and focused, was exactly what we expect from our team. You put the patient first, even when things got heated. That's something to be proud of." Malik nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and relief, but he also sensed there was more to the conversation. His supervisor leaned forward and asked gently, "Do you want to file a report about what happened with Officer Thompson? We'd support you if you choose to, but the decision is yours." The question weighed heavily on Malik. He'd been going back and forth in his mind about it since the night before. Filing a report meant taking a stand, possibly making things uncomfortable, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He thought about the younger paramedics who might face similar situations and how speaking up could prevent future incidents. With a steady voice, he replied, "Yes, I think it's important. I don't want anyone else to have to go through this." His supervisor nodded approvingly and assured him that the station would back him up. Together, they went over the details, putting everything in writing so it would be officially documented. Malik felt a strange sense of peace as he recounted the events, knowing that he was doing his part to create change. As they finished, his supervisor placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and said, "You're doing the right thing, Malik. This isn't just about you, it's about respect for the work we do." Leaving the office, Malik felt a sense of purpose. He'd faced a challenge, but he wasn't alone in this. His colleagues, his supervisor, and even his community were standing behind him. The feeling was empowering, and he realized that his decision might lead to positive change, not only within his department, but possibly even the police force. As he walked back to the ambulance bay, he noticed his partner waiting for him, giving him a supportive nod. "You ready for another day?" his partner asked with a grin, trying to lighten the mood. Malik chuckled, grateful for the normalcy of his work routine, even after everything that had happened. Together, they prepared for their next shift, ready to face whatever the day might bring. Malik knew that standing up had been a risk, but he was also certain it was the right thing to do. He felt a renewed sense of commitment to his job, knowing he was part of something larger, a movement for respect, integrity, and safety for everyone working to save lives. The following days were filled with anticipation as news of Malik's decision to report Officer Thompson began to circulate. Malik found himself in conversations he hadn't expected to have, discussions that extended beyond the walls of the station and into the community. His friends and family expressed pride in his courage, while some local media outlets reached out, wanting to tell his story. Malik was hesitant. He hadn't sought out fame or recognition. All he wanted was to ensure that everyone, paramedics and police alike, could do their jobs without fear of unnecessary confrontation. As he settled into his routine at the station, Malik noticed that his colleagues were being more supportive than ever. They offered words of encouragement and often checked in on how he was feeling about everything. It was comforting to see that the incident had sparked a conversation among his peers about respect and professionalism in their respective roles. He felt like he was part of something important, working toward a culture where everyone in the community could work together safely. One afternoon, while Malik and his partner were on a call, they were dispatched to a local neighborhood where a child had fallen from a tree. The scene was tense, but when they arrived, Malik was struck by how the community came together. Neighbors were already gathered, providing support and trying to keep the child calm. Malik and his partner quickly assessed the situation, and as they began their work, he realized how interconnected their roles were. The people who lived there were doing their best to help, just as he was. It felt like a reminder of why he loved being a paramedic. While treating the child, Malik overheard snippets of conversation among the bystanders. They were discussing the incident with Officer Thompson and how Malik had stood up for himself and his patient. It was clear that Malik's actions had resonated deeply within the community, inspiring others to speak out against unfair treatment. That made Malik proud. He felt a sense of duty not just to save lives, but also to create a safer environment for his colleagues. After treating the child and ensuring he was stable, they loaded him into the ambulance. As Malik secured the stretcher, he noticed a group of adults watching closely, their expressions a mix of concern and admiration. One man approached Malik as they prepared to leave. "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do," he said, his voice sincere. "We need more people like you, standing up for what's right." Malik felt a warmth spread through him. Those simple words meant more than he could express. It reminded him that while he was focused on his work, his actions were influencing others and encouraging them to stand up against what they felt was wrong. It reinforced his belief in the importance of teamwork, not just among paramedics, but with everyone in the community. After returning to the station, Malik found himself reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. He'd gone from feeling frustrated and alone during that confrontation to being part of a larger conversation about respect and accountability. He could see that his actions were pushing for a shift in culture, not just in his own profession, but in the relationship between the police and paramedics as well. Later that week, Malik attended a meeting organized by his supervisor. The aim was to discuss the best ways to enhance collaboration between emergency services. It felt like a pivotal moment, a chance to put ideas into action. As he listened to his colleagues share their thoughts, Malik felt a sense of hope. There was a desire for improvement, and everyone seemed committed to finding solutions. When it was Malik's turn to speak, he shared his experience openly. He emphasized the need for mutual respect and understanding among first responders, how crucial it was for them to work together in high-pressure situations. The room listened attentively, nodding along as he spoke. Malik could feel the energy shift. This was about more than just one incident. It was about building a community where every life mattered and everyone could work together without fear. As Malik continued to engage with his colleagues and the community, he felt a growing sense of purpose. The discussions that began at the meeting spread to informal conversations among first responders in the days that followed. People were starting to share their own stories, experiences that echoed his own frustrations and challenges. It was refreshing to see everyone so willing to open up and discuss issues that had often been swept under the rug. Malik decided to take a more proactive approach by organizing a workshop for both paramedics and police officers. He believed that bringing the two groups together could foster better communication and understanding. He envisioned a space where they could discuss their roles, share their perspectives, and find common ground. He proposed the idea to his supervisor, who was enthusiastic and immediately offered support. Over the next few weeks, Malik worked diligently to set everything up. He reached out to officers from the police department and enlisted help from fellow paramedics to prepare materials for the workshop. The planning process was filled with excitement and anticipation, but Malik also felt some nerves. He wanted this workshop to succeed. It could be a turning point in the relationship between the two services. The day of the workshop arrived, and Malik felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as he walked into the community center where the event was being held. He saw tables arranged in a circle, creating an inviting atmosphere. Officers and paramedics were starting to arrive, some shaking hands and others exchanging friendly banter. Malik was pleased to see the camaraderie beginning to form. It was a step toward the collaborative spirit he had hoped for. As the workshop began, Malik introduced himself and shared his story, his experience with Officer Thompson, the support he received, and the importance of standing up for each other. He emphasized that they all shared the same goal, to serve and protect their community. Malik noticed that his story resonated with many attendees. Some nodded along, while others exchanged knowing glances. It was clear that they understood the challenges he described. Malik then invited a few police officers to share their experiences. They talked about the pressures they faced on the job and how those pressures sometimes led to misunderstandings with paramedics. Hearing their side of the story helped bridge the gap and created a sense of empathy in the room. They were all on the front lines, facing the same unpredictable and high-stress situations. The workshop included interactive discussions where paramedics and officers were split into small groups. They talked about scenarios they often encountered together and brainstormed ways to improve communication. Ideas flowed freely as they built off each other's experiences. Malik could see that the walls were coming down, and the atmosphere was shifting to one of collaboration and mutual respect. By the end of the day, Malik felt a sense of accomplishment. The feedback from attendees was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing gratitude for the opportunity to connect. Some even suggested making the workshop a regular event, which thrilled Malik. He realized that the seeds of change had been planted, and now it was about nurturing those seeds to help them grow. As everyone wrapped up and began to leave, several officers approached Malik to thank him personally. "This was really great," one of them said. "We need more of this." Malik felt his heart swell with pride. It was a reminder that standing up for what was right had a ripple effect, influencing not just his life, but the lives of many others. After the workshop, Malik returned home feeling energized. He had taken a risk by speaking out, and now he was seeing the fruits of that labor. His commitment to building a better environment for everyone had sparked meaningful conversations. The day had not only strengthened relationships, but had also begun to reshape how paramedics and police officers viewed one another. Malik realized that change wouldn't happen overnight, but he felt hopeful. He was part of a movement that valued collaboration, understanding, and respect. As he reflected on the journey so far, he knew that he was right where he was meant to be, working toward a brighter future for his community and his colleagues. In the weeks following the successful workshop, Malik noticed a gradual but meaningful shift in the dynamic between paramedics and police officers. There was a sense of unity building, with more open lines of communication developing between the two groups. Whenever Malik went on calls, he found that officers were more approachable and conversations felt more genuine. It was as if they were working together toward a common goal, not just coexisting in the same space. One day, Malik received a call for a domestic disturbance in a neighborhood not too far from the station. As he arrived on the scene with his partner, they spotted a police car already parked outside the house. Malik could see two officers talking to a woman who appeared shaken but was speaking to them calmly. Rather than feeling anxious, Malik felt a sense of comfort seeing familiar faces. He exchanged nods with the officers as they approached the scene together. After assessing the situation, Malik and his partner were able to help the woman, who needed medical attention. The officers were cooperative and respectful, working alongside Malik to ensure she felt safe and supported. They communicated clearly, discussing the best ways to approach the situation. And it made Malik realize just how far they had come since that tense night with Officer Thompson. The unity he had hoped for was finally becoming a reality. After the call, Malik gathered with the officers outside the house. They took a moment to talk about how well things had gone. One of the officers, Officer Davis, shared, "I feel like we're starting to really understand each other better. It makes a difference in how we can help people." Malik nodded in agreement, grateful for the positive changes taking root within their teams. Inspired by the progress they were making, Malik decided to propose another workshop, this time focused on building teamwork skills in high-pressure situations. He felt that this would further strengthen their collaboration and help them navigate challenging calls together. With support from his supervisor and encouragement from his colleagues, he began organizing the next event, excited to keep the momentum going. As the new workshop approached, Malik reflected on the journey he had taken. He thought about how speaking up had sparked conversations, not only in his own department, but also within the community. More people were willing to stand up for what was right, and it felt like a powerful change was happening. Malik received messages from fellow paramedics and officers who had started their own discussions about respect and teamwork in their respective circles. On the day of the new workshop, Malik felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The room was filled with paramedics and police officers, all eager to learn and grow together. He began by sharing stories from their recent calls, emphasizing the teamwork that had made a difference. It was clear that people were engaged and wanted to contribute. The conversations flowed naturally, filled with laughter and a shared sense of purpose. As the workshop progressed, Attendees participated in role-playing exercises that simulated challenging scenarios. Malik watched as paramedics and officers collaborated seamlessly, sharing strategies and ideas. He saw how their respect for each other was evolving into a powerful bond. It was incredible to witness the trust being built in real time, and Malik felt a sense of pride knowing he had played a role in bringing everyone together. By the end of the day, the atmosphere in the room was electric. Everyone felt invigorated, motivated to continue working together. As they wrapped up, several officers approached Malik again to express their appreciation. "Thanks for facilitating this, Malik. It's clear that we're all in this together," one officer said, extending a hand for a shake. Malik felt the warmth of camaraderie as more and more people echoed those sentiments. As the workshop concluded, Malik left the community center with a heart full of hope. He knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in how paramedics and police officers worked together. There would be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them, knowing he had a strong network of support behind him. Driving back to the station, Malik couldn't help but smile. He had come so far from that night of confrontation with Officer Thompson. He realized that the true strength of a community lay in its willingness to listen, learn, and grow together. Each day brought new opportunities to make a difference, and Malik was grateful to be a part of it. He was inspired by the idea that positive change was possible when people came together, committed to respect and collaboration for the sake of those they served.